think about those powerful words and we go back to our text for today, fear not. Fear not. What is the angel saying to Joseph? What is this message saying to us? You know, oftentimes in life we hear words, we hear phrases that we respond to by thinking or saying, that's easier said than done. You know, we hear those all the time. That sounds easy, but man, that's just too hard to do. And we wrestle with that. These two words that I want us to look at today, fear not, or the three words, do not fear, they fall into that category. Easier said than done. Oh yeah, it's easy to say, I'm going to be tough and bold and strong and not discouraged and all that stuff, and then I'm going to get up. That's kind of when we're laying there in bed in the morning, ready to tackle the day, and everything's great, and I'm gonna just take on and beat up the lions, and I'm ready to go, and now I got to get up, and so it becomes a little more difficult then when we actually have to face whatever it is that's ahead of us, right? And so we're looking at this through the eyes of Joseph, and as the angel has come to him, he's facing some pretty difficult choices, or so it would seem. Fear and worry and concern, all of these almost seem to be a natural instinct. We almost always seem to gravitate toward that when something uncomfortable or something unusual or something new is becoming a part of our day or our life. The challenges that are there, that horrible, ugly word change, whenever it starts kind of integrating its way into our life, we wrestle with that. And fear and worry and concern, they all seem to kind of get in the way. It's almost our first place to run. Fear is the first emotional response after the fall. God comes into the garden and he's walking through and he says, Adam, where are you? It's not that he didn't know where he was at, but he's calling out to him, and Adam says, I was hiding because I was afraid and naked. It wasn't the lack of clothes, it was the lack of excuse. It was all the different things. So we turn to this passage today and we see Joseph has been instructed, fear not. Do not be afraid. We find that phrase, we find that statement continually repeated throughout what we call the Christmas story, right? The shepherds heard it. Do not be afraid. Mary heard it. Zacharias heard it as he's been announced that he and Elizabeth are going to have John the Baptist. We see it continually repeated all through this story. But here we see Joseph as the one being told today, this command. Now, this is important that we understand that word. We just talked about that in our group discussion this morning, the word command, and why this is important. And if we look at this, fear not, the command. This is a command that directs us to our faith. In other words, it's asking us what, and even more importantly, who are you trusting? That's important as we look at our journey. That's important as we're looking at the things that face us in this life that cause us to have fear, that cause us to have doubt and worry and concern and all of those things. The angel is looking unto Joseph and he's saying, don't be afraid to do what God asks you to do. Just like that young man in the video was talking about, who are we trusting? Who are we relying on that gives us the ability to fulfill what God has asked us to do? It should be Him, right? And so we look at this and we look at this word, because if indeed we are trusting in the Lord, if we are trusting in God Himself, then faith and fear, we need to understand this, cannot work together. They are complete and utter opposites. They're on two ends of the spectrum, and they don't coexist. They don't commingle. They don't work together. So certainly we see those that are mentioned throughout this story. The shepherds and Mary and Zacharias and Elizabeth and Joseph. They were absolutely, without a question, they were startled at the sight of the angel, right? That would be quite the thing to look up and see, whether it's the sky filled or there's one in your room or whatever. So the startled look, okay, yeah, we can look at that. We can see that. But the angel, we would all do that. We would all have a little startled look. But the angel, the first words to all of these involved were, fear not. In other words, what it is that I have brought to you is good for you. What it is that I am sharing with you will help you and not hurt you. You have to trust me. Just understand, I've got a message for you. I've got a message for you from God. I have an assignment for you from God, a word of encouragement. How many of us need a word of encouragement today? I think we all do, right? That's what, I mean, life can kind of beat you up sometimes. All right? Here the angel of the Lord is telling to Joseph, fear not. Listen to the message I have to you. I know your basket's been turned upside down. Nothing is going to go and kind of going the way that you had planned. But how many times have you planned something and it didn't go the way you wanted it to? That's pretty much every day, right? You know, and that's why it says in the book of James, don't say and don't boast about what you're going to do tomorrow because you don't know that. And he wasn't scolding us. He's just saying, hang on a minute, you know. And here, Joseph has got all these things laid out. But what the angel is saying is, you can trust what I'm going to tell you. You can trust what is coming. You can place faith in what is there. And so there's no need for fear. There's no need for that right now. Fear not. Again, this is a command that is clearly making it absolutely obvious. This is not a suggestion, but rather it is a challenge. Who are you going to trust? Who are you going to trust? Fear not. Because as was said to Mary, and we talked about it last week, the angel said, you have found favor with God. And Mary would hear this plea, and she would say, I am a servant of the Lord. May it be done unto me. Here, Joseph is wrestling with all this news that has come to him, everything that is going on. So when we look at this challenge that has been given to him, who do you trust? Where is your faith? We have to look at this from a personal way. And that's what I want us to understand about the story of Joseph, in particular, as it pertains not only a wonderful part of the Christmas story and everything that we understand about this whole event, but I want us to look at this just a slightly bit different today. When we look at this story, we find it familiar, not simply because we've heard it a lot. Not simply because it is a Bible story and biblically, oriented in characters or whatever, but here's why it sounds awfully familiar. Because it's relatable. We can say, wait a minute, I kind of, my plans don't always go the way that I want them to. And sometimes the easier way when things don't go the way that I want them to is to what? Quit. Go the other way. Go in another direction. Find all these different things. Be worried and consumed about what somebody else is going to say and how I'm going to react. We see all of that in this story. And we say, wait a minute, I'm beginning to look at this from a more personal way because that could be me. How do I adjust to this? The angel said, fear not. I want us to look for the next few moments while we're together why this is so powerful to us right now. It's one thing to fear not because someone said to. Don't do that. Suck it up. Be tough. All that. But what about when our plans change? What about, okay, it's easy to be tough and get up and everything because everything's going right, but everything's upside down. Nothing is going the way that I thought it was going to. Nothing is working out the way that I thought. I mean, things Joseph could be thinking, things that we could be saying things were going so well. Things were right on the right track. I mean, we were headed in the right direction, and then all of a sudden, there's a major disruption. Not just a little one, a major disruption, a giant change that made everything go upside down, and now the future is uncertain. What are we going to do? How many people have said that? What are we going to do now? We find Joseph in that place. It says in verse 18, the birth of Jesus came about in this manner after his mother had been engaged to Joseph. It was discovered before they came together. We talked about that last week, that she was with child. Joseph had it all laid out. Joseph had all the plans in place. Everything was there. He found the girl. He's got the plans. He wanted to have the family. He's got the career in place. Probably going to open up his own carpentry shop, and everything's going to be great, right? It's all there. Everything's in place. But then the brakes have been hit. The wall has been slammed into. Mary is what? I mean, that's what Joseph is thinking. How? I didn't do it. I wasn't there. We haven't had that level of relationship. I mean, I don't get it. What is going on? What am I going to do? I can't even look at her. I mean, how could she do this to me? This is relatable. This is familiar. This is understandable when we begin to see it this way. Man, my plans have been changed. This is not what I had in mind. And for a moment in his heart, he had to be assuming some things. We all know what assumption can bring, right? I don't have to break that acronym down for us out here from the pulpit, right? But assuming can create a lot of problems when we don't know the whole story, right? It happens all the time. We hear a little bit of this or a little bit of that, a little snippet of something, and it just turns into a gigantic mess. Joseph immediately, because he's human and because he's a man, he immediately thought Mary had been unfaithful. But he didn't know the whole story. He didn't know the whole story. Oftentimes, again, I said, we get a snippet of something, and immediately what happens, it's like a fish story. It starts off this big, and before long, it's a whale. You know, it just becomes added to, and this, you know, can you believe? And then the next person, oh man, I can't believe, but can you? And then before long, you've got a full-blown mess. Okay? And that was just the word of mouth back then. Now in the advent of Facebook and every other kind of book, good grief, what those stories turn out to be. So here we see Joseph totally assuming that something has gone completely wrong. We all maybe have experienced in our life gossip and rumors and innuendos and all this stuff. It causes so much damage. I have seen lives destroyed by this kind of stuff. And it has certainly crippled many churches over the course of time. Joseph is upset. There's no question about that. Joseph is upset. He is worried that all of his plans have been ruined and they've absolutely been changed. But Jesus would teach, as we would learn, and I think it's important to learn, especially right now in this modern time, Jesus would teach, who of you have ever made your life better by worrying? And that's a little paraphrase, but that's what he's saying. Has your life ever improved? Has your stature improved? Has your health improved? Are you any taller? I mean, is anything any better at all because you've worried about everything? Well, here we see when plans get disrupted, that's how we generally react. We get worried about it, right? Or we get upset about it, or we get fearsome about it, we get angry. And so embracing the fear that is presented by the unknown. How did this happen? This was my plans, and now everything's gone awry. Joseph reacted exactly like most do when our plans get changed. He didn't like it. He didn't know what to do with it. And instantly, well, we got to quit. We got to do something different. We got to go in another direction. But the angel said to Joseph, fear not. Fear not. Do not fear. In this case, it wasn't the startle of the angel appearing, but rather what you are thinking is not true. What you are assuming is not the whole story. Let me share with you the truth. How much change does come when we know something? We find out the whole thing instead of just a little portion. You know, it's like looking at a picture. You know, you can have a picture zoomed in, and it's just one tiny little part of it, and you may not really realize what it is, or you may assume that it's something else, and then it blows up, and it's like, oh, that's not what I thought it was at all. Here we're seeing that sometimes with just little bits of information, we get this assuming thing going on, and then we've got a whole problem. He says, what you are thinking is not true. Mary has not been unfaithful. We talked about this last week of the prophecy of Isaiah. Behold, there is a sign from God himself. I mean, that was such a powerful message. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son. The power of knowing changes everything. It gives us that, oh, okay, now I get it moment. I mean, we've all been there, but it changes everything. So the angel was letting Joseph know, you don't have all the facts. Don't jump to conclusions. Don't jump the gun. You don't have all the facts, and your fear over your changed or over your canceled plans, it will not allow you to see the beauty standing before you. Isn't that true? We have it happen to us all the time because, well, I don't know, and which way we go, and we get in such a frenzy and such a mess, we can't even think about anything, and we oftentimes miss the beautiful moment that's standing right in front of us. And we get so overwhelmed that we don't enjoy it. And we get in such a frenzy and a knot about everything, and we ruin stuff. Here, the angel saying, fear not. Calm down. Listen to what it is that I'm trying to tell you. This advice is still so empowering. It's so important today. Fear not. In other words, trust God's plan. How many of us need a good dose of that today? David writes this in Psalm 37. Trust in the Lord and do what is good. Dwell in the land and live securely. Take delight in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. That first word goes back to trust in the Lord. What does that equate? Fear not. That is so important, friends, that we gravitate toward understanding this command. Because fear blinds us to the truth. We can't see it when we begin to look through that lens. It blinds us to the truth. Okay, I mean, I get it. When things change, I get upset, I worry, I fear. Okay, I know I shouldn't. I know I need to do better, but Pastor, I mean, okay, I get that part. I shouldn't get upset when everything gets changed and stuff like that. But what about what others are going to think? What about what others might say? I mean, I got to worry about my reputation. I mean, we used to know a guy that always talked about his reputation. You know, I got to worry about what somebody's going to say. And I mean, come on, man. I mean, Mary's having a baby and I didn't do it. And I mean, what's going on here? And it changes the way that we look. And I mean, I'm scared. I'm scared of what so-and-so is going to say or what so-and-so might do. And they might make a mean post, and they might create a video, and it's just going to go, it's going to go viral, and you see what that does? What does that accomplish? We lose sight of the whole mission. We lose sight of everything. What if this don't work? What if that don't work? What if causes a whole lot of problems because we're not trusting. And this is what the angel is saying, fear not. Listen to what God is saying. Verse 19. So her husband, Joseph, being a righteous man and not wanting to disgrace her publicly, decided to divorce her secretly. I got to do what's right. I mean, man, I love Mary and all that stuff, but yeah, this is just too much. I can't handle this. This is just too much. I mean, what are people going to say? How many times do we still worry about that today? All the time. I'm telling you, I still wrestle with that because I really, really struggle with self-confidence. And sometimes you worry about, whether somebody's going to say something about how you look or what you wear or, how you speak. We wrestle with that. We do. And that is a real problem. And that is why Joseph's story is so relatable because it's like, okay, I get that. Because think about it. If I were faced with that, how would you react? It's probably exactly the same way. And that is why the angel is saying to him, and he's saying to us, fear not. You got to trust in the Lord. I mean, what are people going to say? I'll just quietly get her out of harm's way, and well, I guess I'll just have to move on. That's what the thought process is here. He was not only worried about the public opinion, but indeed he was worried about her safety. Because we have to understand the way things were and how the situations were. By the law, she could have been stoned to death. Because if it had been found out or thought that she had in some way been immoral or committed adultery and was unwed and pregnant, her life was literally on the line. Joseph was allowing, though, all of this fear, all of this concern to shape his plans and change them. Because fear now had been completely overridden by, or faith had been completely overridden by fear. Now I'm not processing anything at all because, well, my plans aren't going the way that I want to, but good grief, what is everybody going to say? I mean, what is my mom going to say? And what is this going to say? And the town gossip and everybody else, what's going to happen? And the angel's trying to get him to understand, here's what God says. Sometimes we don't be quiet enough to hear the still small voice because we let so much get in the way and we let fear blind us. Joseph was allowing all this to change everything, but the angel said, fear not. When we get to this story and understand how relatable it is, we begin to realize, we do this stuff all the time. What is so-and-so going to say? And what is so-and-so going to think? And before long, we've changed our plans or we've quit. We do it all the time. It's an absolute and almost a constant thing. I mean, I feel this call on my life, or I've got this dream, or I've got this and that, but what would, and then we just quit. Or we go in a completely different direction. Well, so-and-so would never believe that, or so-and-so would never accept this, or whatever. But what does God say? That's what we miss. I remember my moment with that. I'll never forget it as long as I live. I've been sitting in my patrol car on the side of the road in complete and utter emotional breakdown because I just couldn't figure it out. And the Lord made it so clear because I had convinced myself that so-and-so was going to say this, or so-and-so was going to say that, or this person had said this or whatever. And God said so clearly, who called you, me or them? It was a defining moment in my life. And it should be a defining moment in all of our lives. The fear of others, the fear of their opinion is without question, it keeps us from God's best. We do it to ourselves all the time. And this is what Joseph is missing. And this is what the angel is trying to get him to see. God's got a plan. There's nothing wrong here. Don't assume the worst. Listen to the message. Proverbs 29 and 25 says, the fear, and this is a powerful verse, the fear of mankind is a snare, but the one who trusts in the Lord is protected. In other words, fear not. It all begins to make sense now. This puzzle is now starting to create an incredible picture. Do we fear the surrender of our lives to God because of what others might think or what others might do? Absolutely we do. If so, though, we have to remember at the end of it all, when we stand before God in that day, that conversation will not be guided by, well, the Lord so-and-so said. God's going to ask one question and one question only. But what did I say? We need to realize that today, friends. Because Joseph, well, the town might have said this or that, so I had to. No. What did I say? I said, go forth with the plans, marry her, and do this. God's plan was there. And so sometimes we miss that. The word fear, and this is something we don't think about. The word fear, it means danger or perceived danger. Well, what does that mean, Pastor? In other words, it's something real or something that possibly only exists in here. How many of us have convinced ourselves of something that we're scared to death of that's not even real? That was never going to happen. It was never existed. It was never real. We've done it. We've scared ourselves about stuff. We've worried ourselves about stuff all the time. Joseph, no doubt, he's concerned. He's fearsome over the public opinion, over the gossip, over the potential threats of harm or even death. But the angel said, fear not. Again, we read verse 20. But after he had considered these things, so he's thinking about, okay, I'm thinking about what I'm hearing here. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, because what has been conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. So I love what that says. After he considered these things, so he's thinking, Mary's with child. Okay, what's everybody going to think? What's everybody going to say? But then even more importantly, what am I going to do? There's the challenge. What am I going to do? In such a time when we're faced with things like that, and we're faced with that pivotal question, what am I going to do? Fear comes in, and fear makes it worse, because in the what ifs and the how to's and all this starts coming in, and when we feel overwhelmed, we need comfort. We need encouragement. We need to be understood that, you know what? Take that deep breath. It's going to be okay. We need something to assure us of that. We need something to bring us to that point. And the angel told Joseph, fear not. Go ahead with your plans. It's going to be okay. Go ahead and get married. Go ahead and build your life. It's going to be okay. But what did that require? Faith. Faith. We have to actually believe that if God said it, God meant it. That God said it, He will do it. We have to trust in that. So here's our question. Do we trust in God or not? It really boils down to that, friends. It really, really does. Everything that Joseph was dealing with was overwhelming because his assumptions were all there. They were all kind of coming to a boiling point. I mean, Mary's been unfaithful, but in reality, she had found favor with God. Think about that. So he's worried about one thing that had a completely different side to it. What he thought, what he assumed, this negative societal place, what he assumed would destroy her, what he assumed would stain her reputation and name, actually caused her name to be known forever. Think about the difference of God's plan and our plan. It's completely two different things. So much of what we get hung up on, so much of what we base our fears and our doubts and our worries and all that stuff on is without foundation. And they continue to fail every time, and they never produce anything good. Have we ever done that and worried ourselves to the point of just complete and utter exhaustion, and then realize when it's all said and done, why did I do that? You know, I just wasted all that time and all that effort and energy, and it was nothing to start with. We've done it a lot. We must hear the angel's voice today, friends. We must hear the angel's voice today. Fear not. This command, this direction, fear not, is even when our plans change. Fear not is even when we are overwhelmed. This fear not is we can trust in God. We need to understand that today. We can trust in His plan. Therefore, we can move forward. We can step out. We can be about what He's called us to do, whatever that may be, because we must remember this. He walks with us every step of the way. He is never going to leave us out there on our own. The angel said, as the angel told Mary, all things are possible with God. If we will embrace that today, friends, we can get overwhelmed by the nature of the world. Many people get overwhelmed during this time of the year, in this season of all the different things that it is. Many get overwhelmed because I can't do this, or I can't buy that, or I can't go here, and we get all wound up in the I can'ts. But the angel told Mary, all things are possible with God. Now we're not necessarily to attach that with marketing and big bank accounts and all that other stuff, prosperity. No. We can have the peace of God. That's what Jesus came to give, right? He came to bring light into the world. He is a Savior for all. We all need one of those, right? We all need a Savior, and He came to give us that. It truly comes down to faith and fear. Which one do we lean on the most? That is the beauty of this simple story. Which one do we lean on the most? Because I assure you today, only one of those will hold you up. And the other will fail every single time. Every single time. Fear not. Fear not. Every one of us at times need a little reminder of that. Because we just get overwhelmed. That's life. That's what happens. This season, it's beautiful. I love it. the decorations, the lights, all the different aspects of it, the stories and the fellowship and the meals and the gifts, and all of it, the songs, all of it is beautiful. It can be stressful if we allow it to be. But may we never forget this. Jesus came to save the world. And that includes you. That includes me. We didn't get left out. We didn't get left out. Fear not. Just take his hand and walk with Jesus. It's like the old song says, just a closer walk with thee. Grant it, Jesus. That's my plea. Father, we thank you.